The air in downtown Veritas hung thick with the promise of autumn, a crisp counterpoint to the usual hum of its bustling streets. But inside the hallowed halls of the Viridian Thread, an exclusive boutique where even the silence seemed to whisper of old money and untouchable elegance, the atmosphere was growing taut. This wasn't just any store, it was a cathedral of couture, a place where dreams were either spun into silk or unceremoniously unraveled. And today, for Serena Hayes, a young woman with a spirit as vibrant as the city itself, a dream was about to fray. Serena wasn't a stranger to hard work. Every stitch in the custom-designed tracksuit she wore, a subtle nod to her burgeoning talent as a fashion designer, a small, independent declaration of her artistic soul, represented countless hours at her worn sewing machine, late nights fueled by ambition and cheap coffee. She'd saved every penny, not for fleeting desires but for this, the annual gala for the prestigious Veritas School of Design. This wasn't just a dance. It was her first real step onto the professional stage, a chance to mingle with industry giants, to show them she was more than just a dreamer. She needed a gown that would speak volumes, a midnight blossom, a shimmering blue silk piece she'd seen online, promising a luminosity that matched her own hopes. As she stepped into the plush, silent interior of the Viridian Thread, Serena felt a familiar tightening in her chest. The store was a masterpiece of minimalist luxury. Polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of recessed lights. Mannequins draped in impossible fabrics stood like silent, judgmental sentinels. It was beautiful, yes, but also intimidating. A place where you either belonged or you didn't. Serena, dressed comfortably for a day of design sketches and errands, felt the silent, unspoken judgment. Then she saw her. Vivian Sterling, the store manager, a woman whose perfectly coiffed hair and tailored suit seemed to be carved from the very essence of exclusivity. Vivian's smile, if you could call it that, didn't reach her eyes, which were cold, assessing, and utterly dismissive. "May I help you?" Vivian's voice was smooth, like expensive whiskey, but laced with an unmistakable condescension. Serena, ever polite, offered a warm smile. "Yes, I'm looking for the Midnight Blossom gown. I saw it online. Is it possible to try it on?" Vivian's gaze swept over Serena's outfit, lingering on her sneakers, then returning to her face with a look that plainly said, "You? Are you sure you're in the right store, dear?" Vivian's tone was sugary, but the words were a poisoned dart. "Our pieces are quite exclusive. Perhaps you're looking for something more accessible?" A flicker of anger ignited in Serena's gut, but she swallowed it down. She had worked too hard to let petty snobbery derail her. "I assure you, I'm in the right place. I'd like to try on the Midnight Blossom." Vivian sighed, a theatrical display of patience. "We don't just allow anyone to try on our haute couture, especially not dressed as you are. These are delicate pieces." She gestured vaguely at the pristine display. "Perhaps you'd prefer to browse our ready-to-wear collection? It's just around the corner." Serena's jaw tightened. "I understand the value of your garments, Mom, and I'm a serious customer. I'm here for that dress." She pointed directly at the shimmering blue gown on a distant mannequin. Vivian's face hardened. The mask of politeness slipped, revealing something sharper, uglier. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but girls like you don't just waltz in here and demand to try on a $1,000 gown in a tracksuit." Her voice rose, attracting the attention of a nearby sales associate who quickly averted her gaze. "You clearly don't understand the clientele we cater to. And you clearly don't understand how to treat a customer," Serena retorted, her voice trembling slightly, but her resolve steady. She walked towards the dress, determined. "I have the right to try on any garment I wish to purchase." As Serena reached for the dress, Vivian lunged forward, her hand shooting out, grabbing the silk. "Get your hands off that," she hissed, her face contorted with fury. "You are not welcome here." There was a sudden, sharp tug of war. The delicate silk stretched, and in the next excruciating second, Vivian's hand, still clutching the fabric, swung back with a vicious force. Slap! The sound cracked through the silent boutique like a gunshot. The ringing in Serena's ears was deafening. Her left cheek burned, a fiery brand of humiliation and disbelief. The world seemed to stop, the pristine marble floor suddenly spinning beneath her feet. Vivian, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and lingering rage, stared at her own hand, then at Serena's face. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with the unspoken. Serena stood frozen, the ghost of the impact still vibrating through her. It wasn't just the physical pain, it was the brutal, shattering realization of being utterly disrespected, reduced to nothing more than a stereotype in someone else's eyes. The dream of the perfect gown, the prestigious gala, the future she was building. It all seemed to shatter into a million glittering shards on that cold, unforgiving floor. A single tear, born of fury more than sorrow, escaped the corner of Serena's eye. She could feel the stares of the other customers, the hushed whispers of the staff. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to curl into a ball and cry. But then, a voice, deep within her, a whisper of resilience that had seen her through tougher times, cut through the shock. You will not break. Not now. Not ever. She'd been through worse, far worse. This wouldn't be the thing that defined her. Serena slowly, deliberately reached into her pocket. Her hands trembled, but her fingers found the familiar cold metal of her phone. She would not let this go. She would not allow this woman or this system to silence her. The pain on her cheek was a fire, but it also lit a fuse. This wasn't just about a slap. This was about a dream, shattered in a moment, but poised to ignite a revolution. And she was going to make sure the whole world heard the echo. The raw, stinging heat on her cheek was a physical manifestation of the insult, but the burning fire in Serena's chest was pure resolve. She stood outside the Viridian thread, the harsh afternoon sun doing little to warm the chill that had settled deep in her bones. Tears welled, hot and furious, threatening to betray the fierce defiance coiling within her. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, to hide, to simply disappear. The humiliation was a suffocating blanket. But then Vivian Sterling's venomous words echoed in her mind. Girls like you don't belong here. No, not this time. Serena's hands, though still trembling, reached for her phone. Her fingers, guided by instinct, unlocked the screen and opened the camera app. She angled it, a silent, grim determination etched on her face. Her voice, when it came, was a little shaky, but held a raw, undeniable power. This is what happens, she began, her gaze unwavering, when you walk into a store and someone decides you don't belong. When they think your skin, your clothes, your presence isn't worthy. She hit me. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her inflamed cheek, a stark visual testament to the assault. Right here, she murmured, gesturing, just for asking to try on a dress, for being a customer. The video was unedited, unfiltered, raw. It was the truth, laid bare. With a deep, shaky breath, she typed a caption that burned with conviction. Stand up, say no to discrimination. And then she hit post. The immediate aftermath was a dizzying blur of notifications. Likes, shares, comments, a digital explosion. The initial flood was overwhelming. OMG, that's insane. What store is that? Name and shame. I'm so sorry this happened to you, Queen. But then, the inevitable darkness began to creep in. She probably deserved it. Typical entitled kid. Stop playing the victim. The online world, with its rapid-fire judgments and faceless trolls, was a battlefield in itself. Serena, curled on her park bench, absorbed the venom, her stomach twisting. It was a secondary assault, a reminder that even in her pursuit of justice, she was vulnerable to the very prejudice she was fighting. Yet, amidst the noise, a different kind of message broke through. A text from her best friend, Lena, simply read, "Serena, are you okay? We're calling Coach, now." The mention of Coach sent a jolt through Serena. She hadn't wanted to involve him, not directly. This was her fight, her humiliation. Bringing him in felt like admitting weakness, like needing a shield. She'd always prided herself on standing on her own 2 feet, on forging her own path, distinct from the long shadow of his renown. But then her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Coach Marcus Hayes. His voice, deep and resonant, filled the air. "Serena, I just saw... Are you all right, baby girl?" Serena's breath hitched. For a moment she was just a scared kid wanting her dad. I'm okay, Dad. I'm just angry. A long pause, then his voice, calm but with an underlying steel she knew well. Angry is good, sweetheart. Good. Because what happened today, that's not okay. That's never okay. And then, the twist. The subtle revelation that would reframe everything. You didn't want to drag me into this, did you? Coach Hayes chuckled softly, a sound that always grounded her. You always were so determined to make your own way, to prove you could do it all on your own away from the spotlight. He paused again. But this isn't just about my fame, Serena. This is about what I've spent my life fighting for, on and off the court. Integrity, fairness, standing up for the underdog. It's about what I taught you, what we both believe in. Serena closed her eyes, the familiar rumble of her father's voice a balm to her agitated spirit. Coach Marcus Hayes wasn't just a famous athlete. He was a legendary figure in collegiate basketball, known not only for his championship teams, but for his fierce advocacy for his players' academic success, for championing diversity within the sport, and for his quiet, consistent work in social justice movements for decades. He'd always believed in the power of a collective, in fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. This wasn't him swooping in to protect his famous daughter. This was him stepping into a fight that was inherently his too. A fight for human dignity. We're not letting this slide, Serena, he said, his voice firm, unwavering. Not a single inch. You did good. You picked your battle and you hit record. Now, we fight this together. And trust me, he added, a hint of his signature strategic brilliance in his tone. We're going to make sure this cry is heard not just round the world, but through the world until things change. Serena looked at the rising tide of support on her screen, the countless voices sharing their own indignities, the pain mirrored in their stories. She had thrown a pebble, and it had created a ripple. Now, with her father's quiet, steadfast strength behind her, that ripple was about to become a tidal wave. She wasn't just Serena Hayes, aspiring designer, victim of a prejudiced slap. She was the spark, and the fire was just beginning. The door to Serena's small apartment swung open, and there stood Coach Marcus Hayes. He wasn't in a tailored suit or a team jersey, but a simple, comfortable sweater, yet his presence still filled the doorway, an imposing figure of quiet strength. His first move wasn't a question, but an embrace, a hug that spoke volumes, shielding her, grounding her, reassuring her that she wasn't alone in this fight. I'm proud of you, baby girl, he murmured into her hair, his voice a deep rumble that always promised stability, for standing up. Now we take this further. They're not getting away with this. That night, the small apartment became a war room. Coach Hayes, with his decades of experience navigating complex systems and advocating for his players, moved with a quiet, strategic intensity. He was more than just a famous name. He was a master strategist, a leader who understood how to build a team and dismantle an opposing force. He immediately called his legal team, their voices hushed but firm on the phone, discussing potential lawsuits, public statements, and the meticulous gathering of evidence. Serena, meanwhile, reached out to Lena, her best friend, who was already mobilizing their small but passionate online community. The goal was clear. Not just justice for Serena, but to expose the Viridian thread's hidden history of discrimination. If Vivian had treated Serena this way, it was almost certain she'd done it to others. The next few days were a whirlwind. News outlets, drawn by the viral video and the unexpected involvement of Coach Hayes, picked up the story with a ferocious appetite. Coach Hayes' daughter faces boutique discrimination, screamed one headline. Viral video exposes retail racism, bled another. The momentum was undeniable. Calls poured in, not just from journalists, but from individuals, anonymous tips, and, most powerfully, from former employees of the Viridian thread. One former sales associate, too afraid to reveal her identity publicly, shared chilling anecdotes of Vivian's pattern of behavior, how she'd routinely profiled young customers based on their appearance, their perceived wealth, or their race, often refusing service to those she deemed unworthy of the store's luxury image. It was a stark, painful confirmation of Serena's experience, proving this wasn't an isolated incident, but a systemic rot. Serena, despite the mounting pressure, stayed active on social media. She refused to let the narrative be twisted. She amplified the voices of others, sharing their stories, reminding everyone that this wasn't just about her celebrity connection, but about a pervasive culture that allowed people like Vivian to operate unchecked. She saw the common pitfall. Businesses often issue vague apologies, suspend an individual and hope the storm blows over. But Serena wouldn't settle for words. She demanded action. Then came the shift. The headlines, once focused on the injustice, began to pivot. Coach Hayes' daughter, a story of privilege and protest. Is this just a celebrity stunt? Serena scrolled through the comments, her heart sinking. The narrative was no longer solely about the systemic issue. It was about her connection to fame, her privilege. Frustration bubbled inside her. This wasn't supposed to be about her father. It was supposed to be about standing up to discrimination. Coach Hayes found her later that morning, hunched over her phone, a storm brewing in her eyes. "Morning, kiddo," he said, stepping inside. He glanced at the buzzing phone. "I take it you've seen the headlines?" Serena nodded, arms crossed. "This isn't how I wanted it to go, Dad. Now everyone's just focusing on me being your daughter, not the real issue." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me, Serena. You didn't choose to be my daughter, but you did choose to stand up for what's right. That's what people will remember. And if my name helps shine a bigger light on this, then so be it. We can use it to our advantage." His wisdom, honed over decades of coaching and advocacy, cut through her frustration. He was right. If the attention was already there, she might as well harness it to push the message further. "Okay," she said finally. "What do we do now?" Within hours, Coach Hayes mobilized his vast network. His legal team drafted powerful statements. Meanwhile, Serena, with the help of a publicist, organized a press conference. She hated the idea of stepping into the blinding spotlight, but if it meant holding people like Vivian accountable, it was worth it. By midday, a podium stood in the driveway of Coach Hayes' estate, surrounded by a forest of microphones and cameras. Serena stood beside her father, her heart pounding, facing the expectant crowd. Coach Hayes began, his deep voice commanding attention. "Good afternoon. I'm here today not as a coach, not as a public figure, but as a father. A father who watched his daughter experience something no one should ever have to go through." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "This isn't just about Serena. It's about the thousands, the millions of people who face discrimination every day and don't have the platform to speak out. Today, we're demanding accountability, not just from one person or one store, but from an entire system that allows this behavior to thrive." Then Serena stepped forward, clutching the edges of the podium to steady herself. Her voice was shaky at first, but grew stronger with each word. "What happened to me wasn't an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that tells people they don't belong, that they're not good enough because of how they look or where they come from. I'm here to say that enough is enough." Her words resonated, sparking a wave of applause. Reporters shouted questions, but Coach Hayes raised a hand, signaling the end. The message had been delivered, loud and clear. As the day unfolded, the response was overwhelming. Major news outlets picked up the story, and public figures from all walks of life voiced their support. Celebrities, activists, even prominent business leaders shared their own experiences with discrimination, adding their voices to the growing movement. This was the unforeseen twist. Her personal battle had unlocked a floodgate of shared pain, revealing that discrimination wasn't just about race, but about class, age, appearance, and countless other biases that marginalized people every single day. The movement was broadening, deepening. Meanwhile, the Viridian thread was thrust into the center of a media storm. More former employees came forward, anonymously sharing their own stories of mistreatment at Vivian Sterling's hands. The boutique's corporate office released a second, more detailed statement. They expressed deep regret, confirmed Vivian's suspension, and announced plans to review hiring practices and customer service policies. But for Serena, it still wasn't enough. Apologies were just words. She wanted real change. That evening, as Serena scrolled through the flood of messages on her phone, she stumbled upon something that stopped her cold. A private message from a young girl named Maya, no older than 15. It read, "Thank you for sharing your story. I've been through something similar, and seeing you stand up for yourself makes me feel like I can too." Serena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. This was why she had done it. For every person who had ever been made to feel small, to feel invisible. She screenshot the message and sent it to her father with a simple caption, "This is what it's all about." Coach Hayes replied almost immediately, "Proud of you, kid. This is just the beginning." This was the lesson, etched in every tear and every shared story, the power of individual vulnerability to ignite collective strength. Her voice, once trembling, was now a beacon, guiding countless others out of the shadows. The threads of her personal struggle were unfurling, weaving into a grander tapestry of shared experiences, building a movement that was just beginning to find its stride. The next step was clear. It was time to face Vivian Sterling not just as a victim but as a force for change. The chill morning air did little to settle the nervous flutter in Serena's stomach. Today wasn't about shopping, it was about confrontation. The Viridian Thread, usually a serene temple of retail, was now a besieged fortress. Camera crews jostled for position outside, their lenses glinting like hungry eyes. Every reporter seemed to hold their breath, sensing the climax of a drama that had captivated the city and beyond. Coach Hayes, his presence a formidable anchor beside her, took a deep breath. "Ready?" he asked, his voice calm but his hand resting lightly on her back, a silent testament to their unity. Serena nodded, her jaw set. She wasn't just Serena Hayes, the aspiring designer. She was a symbol, a voice for those who had been silenced. This was more than just a personal grievance, it was a demand for justice. As they pushed through the throng of reporters, the flashes of cameras momentarily blinded her. They stepped into the hushed interior of the Viridian Thread. The usual soft music was absent, replaced by a tense, anticipatory silence. A woman in a tight, nervous smile, the regional manager, quickly ushered them towards a private office, clearly hoping to contain the escalating situation. "Miss Hayes, Coach Hayes, thank you for coming. We can discuss this discreetly." Coach Hayes stopped dead in his tracks, his voice cutting through the manager's strained politeness. "Discreetly?" he boomed, the sound echoing slightly in the opulent space. "There's nothing discreet about a young woman being assaulted in your store. And there's nothing discreet about the kind of systemic discrimination that allows it to happen." He turned to the regional manager, his gaze unwavering. "We're not having a private chat, we're here for accountability, and that starts with Vivian Sterling. I want her here, now." A tense silence descended, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city. The regional manager visibly blanched, but a command from Coach Hayes was not to be taken lightly. Moments later, the door to the office opened again, and Vivian Sterling walked in. Her usual icy confidence had melted away, replaced by a rigid posture and a forced, almost panicked composure. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding Serena's gaze. Serena stepped forward, her voice surprisingly steady considering the fire raging within her. "Vivian," she began, the name a sharp blade in the quiet room, "what you did to me wasn't just disrespectful. It was violent, discriminatory, and completely unacceptable." She looked directly into Vivian's eyes, refusing to let her look away. "You judged me the moment I walked in. You saw a tracksuit and decided I didn't belong. You thought my dreams, my dignity were worth less than your precious silk." Vivian stammered, her voice a thin thread. I was just doing my job, protecting the merchandise. You..." "Protecting the merchandise?" Coach Hayes's voice cut her off, a thunderous rumble that made the air vibrate. "You slapped my daughter. You thought you'd get away with it because she was just a girl in a tracksuit. You thought you could dismiss her, humiliate her, and face no consequences. Well, you didn't, and the world is watching." The regional manager stepped in, clearly trying to regain control. "Ms. Sterling has been suspended pending a full internal investigation, and we are implementing new diversity and inclusion training for all staff." "Suspension is not enough," Serena declared, her voice firm. "And words are easy. What I want, what everyone watching this wants, is accountability. Not just for Vivian, but for the culture that allowed her to do this." She turned back to Vivian. "Your actions weren't an anomaly, were they, Vivian? We've heard from others, from former employees, from other customers. This is how you've operated. This is how this store has operated. Vivian's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. Her eyes, filled with a sudden, unexpected desperation, flickered towards the regional manager. It's the pressure, she blurted out, her voice barely a whisper. The directives to maintain brand exclusivity, to curate the clientele. They don't explicitly say it, but the message is clear, to only cater to a certain type of customer. If you didn't, you were seen as not understanding the market. The room fell silent. It wasn't an excuse, not by a long shot, but it was a chilling glimpse into the unseen stitches of systemic bias, the quiet, insidious pressures from above that encourage discriminatory practices, even if not explicitly commanded. The pressure to maintain a certain image, a certain exclusivity, often translated into unspoken directives to profile, to judge, to exclude. Vivian was a perpetrator, but she was also, in a twisted way, a product of a flawed system. This wasn't to absolve her, but to highlight that the roots of prejudice often run deeper than just individual malice. Serena looked at Vivian, a flicker of something almost akin to pity crossing her face, quickly replaced by resolve. That doesn't excuse what you did, Vivian, but it highlights the problem. The system itself needs to change. She turned to the regional manager, her voice strong and unwavering. Your promises of new measures? You will make those measures public. You will outline exactly how you're changing your hiring, your training, and your customer service policies. And we will be watching. As they walked out of the Viridian thread, the reporters swarmed them once more. Serena stopped, adjusted her stance, and looked directly into the cameras. This isn't just about me, she announced, her voice ringing clear. This is about holding people accountable and making sure no one else has to go through what I did. And we're just getting started. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the real work. The fight for accountability had only just begun. The confrontation was a turning point, a powerful statement that reverberated far beyond the walls of the Viridian thread, setting the stage for a grander movement aimed at stitching together the broken pieces of a fractured society. The confrontation at the Viridian thread, broadcast live and replayed countless times, sent shockwaves through the luxury retail world. It wasn't just a viral video anymore, it was a global conversation, a stark spotlight on the often hidden corners of prejudice. Serena found herself pulled in 1,000 directions. The hateful comments still trickled in, insidious whispers designed to break her spirit, but they were drowned out by an overwhelming tide of support and, more importantly, shared stories. Messages poured in from every corner of the world, testaments to similar indignities suffered in silence. This is bigger than us, Serena, Coach Hayes said one evening, watching her scroll through her phone, her brow furrowed in thought. This is an opportunity to truly make a difference. We need to take this to the next level. His words ignited a new fire in Serena. The initial anger had matured into a profound sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Maya, for the anonymous sales associate, for every single person who had been made to feel less than. They quickly arranged meetings with formidable figures in the civil rights community. Among them was Ms. Eleanor Vance, a renowned civil rights lawyer whose very name commanded respect. Eleanor, with her sharp intellect and compassionate eyes, became a crucial mentor. Your story, Serena, Eleanor explained during their first strategy session, is a powerful personal narrative. But to create lasting change, we need to connect it to a broader narrative. We need to show that this isn't just one bad apple, but a pervasive problem. Together, they formulated a plan. The Stand Up Together hashtag, initially a cry for help, was transformed into a full-fledged movement. They launched a dedicated online platform, a safe space where individuals could share their experiences of discrimination, anonymously if they chose, and find resources, legal aid, counseling services, community support networks. The platform became a digital archive of injustice, a testament to the urgent need for change. One story among many struck Serena deeply, a young engineer named Marcus, recounting how he was repeatedly passed over for promotions despite his qualifications, simply because his presence didn't fit the corporate culture. Another, from an elderly woman named Mrs. Davies, described being dismissed and ignored by a doctor because of her age, her concerns waved away as just old age complaints. Each story, a single thread, began to weave into a grand, heartbreaking tapestry of systemic bias. Serena, guided by Eleanor, started appearing on panel discussions, virtual town halls and live streams. She spoke not just about her experience, but about the patterns she was seeing, the hidden biases that permeated everyday life. "You're not alone," she repeated, her voice steady and clear. "What happened to you? It's not your fault, it's the system. And together we can change it." Her words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply with the audience. The emphasis wasn't just on exposing the wrongdoers, but on empowering the wronged, on building a community of support. And then, the first seismic shift beyond the Viridian thread. A major national luxury retailer, Athelred & Co., a direct competitor of opulence, issued a public statement. Not just an apology, but a commitment to sweeping changes. They announced mandatory, comprehensive diversity and inclusion training for all employees, from the C-suite down to the newest sales associate. They outlined a new, transparent customer feedback system specifically for reporting discrimination, with guaranteed follow-up. They even pledged to partner with community organizations to ensure their policies were truly equitable. It was a clear, undeniable victory, a direct consequence of Serena's courage and the Stand Up Together movement. This wasn't opulence, the very store where Serena was slapped, but it was a groundbreaking win. It showed that the industry was feeling the pressure, that companies were beginning to understand that silence and inaction were no longer options. It was a pivotal moment, signaling that the ripples Serena had created were now powerful waves, forcing a re-evaluation of long-held discriminatory practices across an entire industry. Serena felt a quiet satisfaction in these smaller victories, in the private messages she continued to receive. A young woman who, after seeing Serena's video, had confronted her own manager about a similar experience and had actually seen a positive change. A struggling student who found free legal advice through the Stand Up Together platform. These weren't front-page headlines, but they were the real, tangible impacts that fueled her, reminding her that change was a long, arduous climb, but every single step, every single voice, contributed to a larger, more just world. The grand tapestry was still being woven, thread by painstaking thread. It was a testament to the power of one voice, one incident, to unravel threads of injustice and begin to restitch them into a fabric of fairness and dignity for all. But the fight was far from over. There was one more crucial step, ensuring that the lessons learned would be paid forward, transforming outrage into lasting, tangible support for the community. The day dawned bright and clear, a perfect autumn Saturday in Veritas. But this wasn't just any Saturday. In the sprawling green expanse of Unity Park, a vibrant buzz filled the air, a symphony of hope and healing. Tents, emblazoned with the Stand Up Together logo, dotted the landscape, each offering a promise: donated clothing, warm meals, resources for job training, legal advice clinics, and mental health support. People from all walks of life gathered, survivors of discrimination, their families, allies, and curious citizens drawn by the spirit of the movement. It was a tangible manifestation of the grand tapestry they had been weaving. Serena stood on a makeshift stage, the microphone warm in her hand, looking out at the sea of faces. The anxiety she often felt in the spotlight had been replaced by a quiet power. Her father, Coach Hayes, stood proudly beside her, his presence a comforting anchor. "A few months ago," Serena began, her voice resonating across the park, "I walked into a store, and I was made to feel like I didn't belong. I was judged, I was belittled, and I was physically assaulted." A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. But what that system didn't understand was that her actions sparked something. They sparked a movement. She paused, letting the words sink in. "Today we're here to say that enough is enough. We're here to take action, not just with words, but with deeds. We're here to offer support, to build community, and to create a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and seen." She spoke of Maya, the young girl who had found courage from Serena's video, of Marcus, the engineer who now had access to legal aid, of Mrs. Davies, who finally felt heard. These personal stories, once whispers of pain, were now powerful anthems of resilience. Coach Hayes stepped forward, his deep voice carrying effortlessly across the park. "I've spent my life coaching teams," he said, his eyes scanning the diverse faces before him. "And what I've learned is that the strongest teams aren't made of the most talented individuals, but of those who lift each other up. Those who understand that true strength comes from unity. What Serena started, what all of you have built, is the ultimate team, a team for justice, a team for human dignity." He held up a large whiteboard, scrawled on it in bold, confident letters with 3 simple words: "A world without prejudice starts with us." He held it high, and Serena joined him, their hands clasped over the board, a powerful symbol of their shared mission. After the speeches, Serena descended into the crowd, her face alight with a genuine smile. She moved among the people, shaking hands, listening to their stories, offering comfort. She knelt down to talk to a shy young girl named Kira, clutching a worn teddy bear. Kira's mother explained how Kira had been unjustly turned away from a summer camp due to insufficient funds, a thinly veiled excuse. Serena listened intently, her eyes filled with empathy, then connected Kira's mother with a volunteer from the legal aid tent. Small moments, but profound. Each interaction was a thread being carefully, lovingly woven into the grand tapestry. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the park, Serena felt a profound sense of peace. The day had been long, emotionally draining, yet incredibly fulfilling. She leaned against her father, watching the last of the attendees slowly disperse, their faces alight with newfound hope and connection. "You've made me proud, kiddo," Coach Hayes said softly, his voice full of emotion. "Not just for what you've done, but for who you are." Serena leaned into his shoulder, her heart full. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." He chuckled, a warm, comforting sound. "That's what family's for, and that's what community's for." As the house grew quiet later that night, a sense of deep contentment settled over Serena. The journey had been difficult, marked by public scrutiny, online venom, and personal vulnerability, but it had also been transformative. She had learned that true strength wasn't in hiding her pain, but in channeling it, in using it to amplify the voices of others. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. Prejudice, like a persistent weed, would always try to sprout, but today they had planted something stronger, something more resilient. They had shown people that change was possible, that collective action could dismantle deeply entrenched injustices. They had sparked something bigger than themselves, a movement that would continue to grow, driven by the courage and stories of countless others. And in that, Serena found not just hope for the future, but a profound sense of belonging within a larger, more just world. Thank you for watching this story. If you were moved by Serena's journey, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next one. Check out our other videos for more compelling tales of resilience and justice. And don't forget to share this video with your friends. Your support helps us keep telling these powerful stories.